Okay, so welcome to a short conversation on organisational structures. And for a lot of us here tonight, particularly people that work in the financial sector, you may think of organisational structures as what we refer to as company structure. So sole trader, partnership, company, it's not that. We're talking about an organisational design on how people work in an organisation. So we might start with a bit of a definition here tonight. So we're not talking about that traditional structure. It's more around a system that clarifies the flow of all business activities. And there is certainly no one-size-fits-all when it comes to business structures. And it's something Nat and I were talking about. It's something we expect to see in businesses to break at different times and evolve and iterate. It's never going to stay the same. It needs to evolve with the growth of your business. So through setting goals and strategy, business owners are able to determine what structure usually works best for them. And when they get it right, they'll really see their business fly. When they don't, you see a lot of stagnation. You see stifling of creativity and usually an obstruction of workflow. Anyone experienced that before? Obviously not where you work now. So it's fair to say that organisational structures and the way businesses work add to the levels of engagement or empowerment, also satisfaction in businesses, and therefore in turn they can take all of those things away as well. There's a lot of studies that are done around dissatisfaction of people in their workforce. We're focusing more on how that affects the business as a whole in its operational sense. Customer experience right through to the bottom line. So customers really can tell when organisational structures aren't working. They can tell when employees aren't in flow, when they're not really connecting with each other and what they do. It becomes quite obvious. So I thought I'd give a little bit of a 101 on the history of organisational structures. Yes, glad you've got beverages. So the building blocks would be considered the chain of command. So that's the first one. So that's all around that task delegation. Then you've got the span of control. So who's under what line manager? Then you've got what tasks fall in what areas of responsibility. So departmental considerations. Then you've got centralisation as the third main building block. So that's where decisions are made, what people make decisions, and what departments have a say in decision making. So a centralised organisational structure will probably have one or two people in a leadership position that will make the majority of the decisions. Decentralised is more teams making decisions. So think of it more as departments make their own decisions and then feed that information out to the rest of the organisation. Excuse me. So to go super broad brush, there are two types of main structures that people talk to. The mechanistic, which is more the bureaucratic model, and organic, which we're going to delve into a little bit tonight. So the mechanistic is more about that narrow span of control. It's very top down, formal, rigid. It definitely creates accountability in teams, which is a positive, but it stifles that creativity and agility. It means that it's a bit harder to respond to market changes like we've seen over the last couple of years. But the chain of command is always totally clear. So with every structure, there's pros and cons to it, that's for sure. So around organic structures, there's a wider span of control. It's more decentralised. You've got basically multi-teams that might answer to one person, yet they all make their own decisions. It's more project-based, it's less formal, and it can make the chain of command harder to decipher. So you'd find that some people in these organisations, where they may enjoy their work, they may be a bit confused about who goes what, where, how, all of the above. So it's a great structure for when things need to move fast and growth needs to take place and decisions need to get made. But division of labour can be a little bit confusing, and it can actually really empower people to try new things as well. So again, with every structure comes pros and cons. We could take a deep dive into, the theory of organisational structures, but I think we'd fall asleep. So let's just talk more about some interesting trends that are going on. So historians, philosophers, psychologists, they all agree that humanity evolves in these sudden leaps. Different leaps that we've all experienced is tribal era, agricultural, industrial, so they're all zones of time that we're aware of. They're often referred to in terms of colours, and they're used to describe the different stages, and each stage has made breakthroughs, real breakthroughs and changes in the way organisations work. If you could just share the slide, guys. Who here's heard of Frederick Laloux? He wrote a book. Yep, of course you do. He wrote a book called Reinventing Organizations. It's a great read, and it goes through this in quite a bit of detail. It talks about how humanity has shifted through different stages of consciousness over time. So this is a really good way of considering that. So that red is that impulsive worldview kind of approach to structure. Think mafia, top down, very much power-based, division of labour, it's all about the authority. Then we went through the amber, the conformist era, which was around, like, considered like the army or the Catholic Church or schools, so quite rigid in structure. Then we went to the orange, achievement era, which was born out of democracy and science and progress, and there was a lot of positivity there. Think about organisations like Nike when they were at their heyday originally. Think about GE, Coca-Cola, organisations like that. So a lot of accountability in these structures and ways of working, but incredibly materialistic, all about climbing ladders, achievement, that type of thing. Then we go to green, which is pluralistic. It's focused on social inequality, it's all around community, it's organisation as families, empowerment, values, culture, they're words that you'd hear often touted in the workplace. So think not-for-profits, social ventures, and the new corporates that we're seeing now. This is a very common structure of the time that we're living in right now. So in this green pluralistic way of working in an organisation, it can be seen as contradictory. Quite often, organisations that have leaders in this space, they want to work differently. They want to take that next step, but they just don't quite know how to evolve. So it's usually, you've got very idealistic leaders in these organisations. But yeah, they're not quite at that happy place yet. So again, keep in mind that all organisations can have elements of these structures in them. They don't necessarily have just one colour that they stick to. They'll have aspects throughout. So then we meet teal at the top there, the evolutionary. So this is a place to discover true selves. It's all about reaching your unique potential as an individual and collectively as a group. It's all about taming the ego, rightness, wholeness. So it's an incredibly idealistic, or would be perceived as an idealistic way of working. And it's all around, working together. So this is where we are now in our evolutionary status in organisational structures. So the old is breaking down. People within organisations are aware of this type of structure of business, and there's many names for it, and there's many brilliant minds that have been behind this. So yeah, it'll make for an interesting conversation tonight. So that's just a bit of context to talk about what we mean in organisational structures. Now I'd like to introduce our guests. We have Nat Welch. She's all around collaborating with purpose-driven leaders to make change.
That's right.
And Lloyd Valentine. He's the founder of social impact organisations Healthy Change Challenge and Healthy Change Village. He's all about innovation in health and well-being, and very community orientated as well.
Can I, if I may, add
Please.
Hairdresser extraordinaire?
Well, you could, but you'd be lying.
No, I actually not, because I have recently cut my wife's hair.
Oh no.
And my baby's hair, and we're still married. So
Amazing.
I'm claiming that as,
Yes, I like that. Okay. Adding value.
Untapped skills.
That's right. Okay, so we'll start asking some questions. And guys, at any stage in time, feel free to interject, ask questions. So Nat, what's the key influencer that you believe in people making decisions around their organisational structure.
Yeah, so hello everybody, nice to meet you all. So just by way of introduction, my personal background's in learning and organisational development, and I've worked in purpose-driven employers for about 25 years, so predominantly community services, NGOs, social enterprises, so we actually have that in common. So of course I'm going to advocate that the essential key influencer when organisational design is people. So I think people and purpose are your biggest drivers. We can't forget the other P's though, which is around profit. So cash is oxygen for business, and without that, but I truly believe that people are the lifeblood of organisations, and the purpose influences the practice and how those align. So my background, I was lucky enough to be involved in large-scale organisational change projects, looking at organisational designs and the variety of organisational designs, which you did a great intro to what's available. And I encourage each of you tonight and those watching the recording to challenge your thinking when it comes to the different design options that are out there and what particularly might work for your business context. Because I was trained in what they call open systems theory. So open systems theory, and we've seen that a lot over the last few years, is that organisations are open ecosystems where they're easily influenced with what's going on not only inside their organisation, but also what's happening in that industry to external environment. So a good approach, I think, when we talk about what's a key influence is around that organisational adaptivity. So what I mean by that is, how is your business or organisation planning for what's going on out there, but also learning from, and how can you look at other organisational designs that are out there across the market to learn what would work best in your context. So hopefully tonight we can share with you a few different options of what's available. But I do think that the number one out there is definitely people and purpose as far as key influencer. And I believe that sometimes we underestimate as business owners or working as managers or leaders inside organisations that people actually have the mastery of talent and goal orientation to actually design and really cool workplaces. Yeah, and so I'm trained in what they call participative design. So participative design is listening to the voices and choices of the people who work for you and with you that support the goals of your business with how they could design a best place to work.
Incredibly challenging when you're thinking of a room full of people all with these drivers behind them.
Yeah, that's right. But it's around, and I'll talk a little bit later about those intrinsic motivators that we're looking to optimise or maximise inside workplaces when it comes to unlocking some of those keys about what design would work best for your context.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Thank you. Lloyd, with your business Healthy Change Challenge, what was your process in deciding your organisational structure and the way that you'd work?
Well, there's a bit of a background. I used to be a suit back in the day, and through my corporate experience, like working with and for a number of different organisations that had a real disconnect between the different levels of the organisation, I saw the sort of frustration in those organisations for people at all different levels, and I was also micromanaged in a couple of my roles early on, which I don't think anyone really enjoys. So I was sort of looking at, when I was setting up the business, doing things in a different way. And that was when a friend of mine, who I'd been rattling on about how things could be different, it could be like a lot flatter than what organisations are, sent me a YouTube link to Reinventing Organizations, which is Frederick Laloux, as you pointed out before. And then I read his book. And that sort of showed me that it has actually already been done in a number of different industries, in a number of different countries. In different ways. So then I just sort of picked little pieces that I liked of those organisations and other organisations that I've been involved with, and sort of evolved it from there. Yeah. And it's forever evolving. Like, it's not ever a set, rigid thing, I think, is one of the key points.
Do you remember some of the organisations that inspired you?
Butzorg.
Yeah, that's an incredible story.
Yeah, it's a really cool organisation. I suggest if you're interested in finding out more about teal organisations, especially something in the non-for-profit or community space, that's a Dutch nursing organisation, and how they've gone about things is really cool. That's probably where we've drawn a lot of inspiration from. Yeah. But like inspiration has also come not just from businesses itself, but from other organisations like sporting groups or other people. We just like how they operate and like we just sort of try and pick their brains.
Yeah. I like the idea of that. Just I'll grab a bit.
But
of
that's that learning from principle.
Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely. And we've never had. We operate as a social enterprise, so we've never had a board. But one of the things that I've really enjoyed about collaborating with the business centre is the business centre is essentially like a board for us. So if we don't have particular expertise in an area, then we'll go to the business centre to ask, okay, who can help us with this? And so we've had amazing support in a number of different areas like that. So.
Cool. We're lucky to work with you. So Nat, how do you know if an organisational structure is not working, or is it the wrong people on the bus, so to speak? Like, how do you, as a leader in an organisation, how do you work that out?
So I think the pinnacle question is, what would your employees say about working for you? To me, how would the employees describe the employee experience? So I think that's the number one question to ask. So before I pick up the people on the bus and who should be let off the back door, because that's the other part of the question. I think when we talk about employee experience, when it comes to organisational design, the two are definitely related. If we talk about, there's really sort of 6 key intrinsic motivators or criterion that people have when it comes to work. And it's irrespective of what job role they have, what title they hold, or what level of the organisation that they find themselves in. So what people are after, and the first 3 you want to optimise, and as I'm saying these, just think about for yourself, where would you score yourself, right? If optimal 0, and you can have too much of it, and you can also have too little of it. And think about how your current organisational design might be influencing some of these factors for your people. So the first one is that people want adequate elbow room. So people want the optimal space, to make decisions. So when often I say that, people go, oh, well, we can't have our people going rogue or making those too many decisions. But the key word is that they need to make decisions within still the arena or the boundaries of your organisation, and your job as the business owner or the custodian of the business is to sort of boundary ride out there and make sure that we're still playing in the arena space. But do they have the adequate level of decision making? Or sometimes in organisational charts, what we see, there's so many levels of responsibility to get things approved that it slows you down. Remember I talked about organisational adaptivity before, so that definitely can be a limiting factor for your business. Yeah. The second thing that people seek, that they want to operate at an optimal level inside their business, is learning. So when we say that people want to be able to learn on the job, they want to be able to set their own goals. So if sometimes what we see in organisational designs, the goals are being set from the top rather than being set by the people doing the productive work. And the other thing we often see is feedback. So people want to receive and get feedback that's accurate and timely. So we want those optimised when we look at organisational design. The next level down is when we talk about things that can be maximised. We can't get enough of it in workplaces, right? And so that's what we call mutual support and respect. So when we talk about organisational designs, your current organisational design might be influencing competition versus cooperation. So ideally what we want to see in organisational design is that there's mutual support and respect, and that's being maximised. So that's where people, if they see a man down, they'll go and help them. The team rally around an important cause to amplify or get momentum on it. So that's also a thing we want to maximise. The next thing there is meaning. So that's really important to me. So purpose, you can't take the purpose out of Nat Welch. So the thing is that people want to see social value and how their role or their work adds more social or community outcomes or purpose or value. They want to be able to go to a barbecue and say that, hey, the work I do matters. And then the last thing is they want to see your product end to end. So with the organisational design, are they stuck in a job role or stuck in a function, and they only have one part of the business and they don't see how that evolves to the whole experience for the customer? And the next one there is variety. So people want variety in their work and what they do. And the last one, I'm nearly there, is that they want a desirable future. So your employees want to know that from working with you, that's maximised. And I think when you talk about your organisation, that's really true, is that they want to see that they have a pathway, that they've got options, that someone's listening to their voice with what their success is. Yeah.
Yep.
So your design of your organisation can influence that. So if I flip the question now and go back to, you know, is it about letting people off the bus? Because I've also worked in HR, so I've seen when that happens. Is that no? I actually am fully believe, after spending a lot of time in HR, is that sometimes people blame for the problem where it's actually a design fault.
Yep.
So sometimes what we see is that people get let off the bus, or say they're not up to the job or they're not up to the task, because it's actually a design fault that's occurring within the organisational chart. So some of those, as I said, that competition can play out, competitiveness. Sometimes it can play out that people are using their job titles as a bit of a power or ego. It can also play out when we see interrelationships, or hierarchical relationships where we've got power over rather than power with and within people. And so there's a variety of ways there that I think sometimes we can misdiagnose what is actually going on. So I encourage each of you, just to, before we identify the first level problem of a person, that we also look behind with what's going on inside your organisational design, and how maybe that, when I go back to those intrinsic motivators I spoke about before, how we can create best places of work.
In narrative therapy, there's the concept of the person is not the problem is the problem. So you don't go straight to the person, it's the actual problem that you need to address instead of
because I think sometimes we see in organisations like the design is actually the reason the over-dependence is happening, or the design could be the reason why the overwhelm's happening. Remember, I spoke that you could have too much of some things. So often what we see in, you know, organisational design is the leaders and managers are holding too much responsibility, but people on the front line don't have enough. So is that too little? And how are you balancing that off?
I think it's also really important to have a solutions focus as well, rather than just looking at the problem itself.
So the team members being aware of the problem possibly and coming forward with a solution there, and being willing to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the more people are involved in the solution, the more empowered they are.
And that co-design aspect of it.
Lloyd, can you tell everyone a little bit about your organisation that you founded, but also what it's been like working in an organisation with a flat structure, more of that teal structure? So the hits and the B-sides.
Sure. So Healthy Change Challenge is an empowering health and wellbeing program for people with a disability. It's an NDIS provider. The participants learn to run their own exercise sessions, cooking sessions, mindfulness and meditation sessions in collaborative teams all around the Hunter region, depending on what activities they're doing. So the experience for Teal with HCC has been interesting. The HCC has been operating for 6 years, and of that 6 years, I've had chronic health problems for 4.5 of those years. So having the Teal structure has actually been really valuable in the fact that we've had shared knowledge, shared decision making. So anyone can make any decision within the organisation, depending on how big the decision is. They just have to make sure that they consult someone that's directly affected by the decision and someone with expertise. And that's proven to be very effective for us. It's had its challenges as well in terms of when I've been unavailable for long periods of time, people tend to, in a crisis, go back to something they're most comfortable with, which is more sort of the centralized model. And it seems like the more I'm involved, the sort of flatter it becomes again. And it's not perfectly flat, but the important part of it is it's agile. And that's what you were talking about before. And that's proved to be really effective, especially during COVID, where things have to change very quickly because there's such big decisions being made that are outside of our control. Our ability to adapt quickly has been really proven, I think. Like the feedback that we're getting from the participants and their support network and other organisations is how quickly information is getting out, because it doesn't have to go through multiple levels of hierarchy before it's approved, and then it's actually outdated before the information gets out.
Have you sorry to butt in, but have you found that some people just sort of drifted out of the team because they weren't a fit?
Yeah, so it doesn't work for everyone. And that's something that I'd like to point out, is that Some people, I think it works for most people. Most people have really embraced it. We are actually able to retain a lot of our staff, like 25% of our staff have been with us for 5 years or more through all the episodes we've been through. But some people really like to be told what to do.
There's comfort in that.
Yeah, and some people like to tell other people what to do with that sort of a bit of a power trip. And we sort of operate on a different philosophy so that no one is above anyone within the organisation. So even when we're working with the participants on the program, we don't talk down to them at any stage. It's not even like a teacher-student relationship. It's kind of like a big brother or a big sister. You're just there to sort of help if need be. But the whole idea is our staff's role is to make themselves redundant so that the people are empowered as much as possible. Yeah.
It's cool. It's been amazing to watch it change and grow.
Yeah, it's been a really interesting journey, but I'd say by far and away much more of a positive experience. And to be honest, the organisation wouldn't be there today, given the health experiences that I've had, if it was that sort of hierarchical structure where
it's dependent on you.
Dependent on me.
Yeah.
So it's really nice from a health, well-being, lifestyle perspective, not to have a business completely dependent on me. So, yeah,
absolutely.
Good point.
Means you've been free to start a second business.
Yeah, and potentially like a third now as well. So,
oh no, I haven't heard of that one yet.
Yeah,
Can't wait.
but I think one of the really important things when you're thinking about your business structure, no matter where you are, is to value your time.
Yes.
So it's not a matter of whether you think you're better at making or doing things than other people. It's about sharing the knowledge and with other people so that other people can do things if you're not available for whatever reason. Yeah.
Nat, have you seen some of these more teal structured organisations up close?
Yeah, as I said, I was involved in a large not-for-profit moving from a bureaucratic structure to a democratic structure or self-managed teams. And they thought that would take them 6 months to do. I think 3 years later, I was still on that project. It was and they were definitely what I would call a brownfield site. So they're a long-term established business. They had lots of complexity. Even down to the point they weren't really sure who worked for them. They didn't have an active staff list. And then trying to navigate that, they were highly unionised. A whole heap of things went against them, and so. But they stayed true to the North Star, right? And they kept going. But I think what I did observe during that period was the power of the people. So what I did observe is that when I had to go out and run workshops with the workers from a range of roles and ask them, how could you, if you were given the power of the pen and could design a great workplace here, what would you do? And some of the ideas, I saw hamburger designs, I saw a whole range of things, but what they did design was actually quite productive. And they actually were able to get rid of a lot of those, multiple level of supervisor relationships that we often see in large corporates or bigger organisations. Because what we do know about traditional structures, they tend to get more parts added. And we're all guilty of this at different points in our career. We think, we need someone to do that, so we add another part in, or we... and before we know it, we've sort of got multiple parts doing different things, where the principle of what Lloyd and I are talking about is more that you build the essential knowledge and skills within the people and flatten it out a bit. So there's actually more skills and knowledge rather than parts or people being added or functions being added. You want to actually, at any point in your business, have more skills and knowledge than you actually need to do the productive work. And so that's where we start to get a bit more loose around job titles and role titles. So that's something I did observe, is that some people are very bonded to their job title. And I get that, right? You've done 4 years at university, you've climbed the corporate ladder, you've probably collected some war wounds on the way, and that's important to you. And then when someone says, hey, we're going to work in a team-based structure, we're going to be more equal, we're going to have equal decision making, it can be a bit confronting. So that didn't go too well. So I agree with you before, this way of working is not necessary for everybody. Because I think sometimes we're conditioned because most of the organisations we've worked in are more that traditional, which you gave some really good examples of.
Bureaucratic.
Yeah.
Yep.
And a lot of people attach their value to their title and their role as well. So when you're looking at flattening it out, one thing you need to be aware of is people feeling threatened if they feel like their role is not going to exist anymore, or other people will get knowledge on what they're doing and whatever else, rather than
lose control.
Rather than seeing the big picture of like what innovation and creation can come from sharing this.
Yeah, and
It's a big shock.
Yeah, and that project I was on, it also involved the union that was heavily involved because, and they were actually pro these types of models, and the other player was the Fair Work Commission. So DP and a booth, and they're very much, advocating for organisations to change it up a bit because those traditional structures are maybe not necessarily where modern work is. And I think the other important thing is compensation. So when you start to, if you're a brownfield site trying to go to more a self-managed team, it is a trickier space because you've also got to take into account there may be different pay levels and not necessarily the existing award structures or enterprise agreements support self-managed teams.
That's definitely been our experience.
So it's a consideration because you pay more for skills and knowledge as opposed to job title or classification. So that's sort of a slippery slope that you have to take into account as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As well as men, male and female, because that just sounds like male and female in a different mood. You know, how women are trying to be bosses and men are always the bosses, throughout history.
Yeah, so some of those gender biases.
Yeah.
I think that, let me think about that. It was definitely, like, I probably wouldn't say necessarily male-female, but ego is, like, man, I hit some big egos when I was in that
So
that
ego
project.
more than gender.
Yeah, more ego than gender, I would say, because I think, and also power relationships I want to come back to, like, and I'll flip it around a bit. So there was a support worker who was quite open. He said he wanted to stay as it was. And I curiously asked him why, and he said, well, because I like the fact I can blame my boss. And I like the fact that someone else is taking responsibility. I just want to come in and do my job and go home. And so I think that, his relationship to the business was probably more transactional. And so the new way of working is more transformational, and sort of that was a thing. And then we also saw people that were running you got your typical team leader model, people running teams. And then when you take away that part of their role, what's left? So there was probably an identity shift, with regard to, well, if the team are making the decisions as a collective, which is similar to what you're doing in your organisation, it doesn't have to go up to a hierarchical one-up. Necessarily, what am I left with? So there was a bit of role redundancy that happened.
Can I just add to that, the importance of the language used in the organisation as well. So even the term boss sort of suggests
hierarchy
and stuff like that. So I've always insisted with the staff, don't call me the boss or anything like that. I'm not the boss. You're the boss.
You're Lloyd.
Yeah. So basically,
Lloyd, hairdresser.
That's right, hairdresser extraordinaire, bald man. But basically, even things like calling it, I don't call it my business. It's not my baby. It's our business. It's our team. It's not my team. Yeah. There's that sort of suggests ownership and stuff like that, which is really not helpful for that sort of shared model where basically we're all in it as a team. So that's something to be aware of as well in terms of how little things you say can be perceived.
Yeah. Can I ask about, to both of you, in these more open flat models, have you found there to be this false positivity that sort of creeps on in and infects the team at times?
Would you like to take that first?
Yes. So I know sometimes, like I've said, I've been unavailable for long periods of time. I've come back in with these idealistic views. Yeah. And people are like, oh, here we go again. But I think if you sort of do more, you're talking through the actions, what you're doing, then it just sort of creates a space. So you don't necessarily have to tell people that the managers that they're no longer going to be managing people, because what sort of happens is that their roles and responsibilities are being shared by other people, which frees them up to do less people management because people are self-managing all of a sudden.
And more mentoring.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many people have come into the organisation and have sort of been pigeonholed into doing a certain thing before, have no idea what they're capable of until they're given the opportunity.
That's it.
And that's both the participants on the program, and that's very much so for the staff as well. So it's kind of like a bit of a mind explosion when people are sort of like, oh, what? So I can do that, I can say that, I can,
Have a
talk
voice,
to that person. So, I guess actions speak louder than words in that front. And but like I said before, my experiences have by and large been positive. There has been some challenges created through having a purpose-driven organisation. I can go into now if you like.
Go for it. Yep.
Okay, so we're basically, when the business started, we were all about empowering the participants and their support network and being all about them. Then I got unwell and we didn't have the support structures in place for our staff. And that's when we sort of really changed the focus from just being about the participants and their support network to being pretty much by and large about the staff to then empower them to do all those things. And but through having that purpose-driven organisation, we attract people who are very passionate about their health and wellbeing and supporting others with their health and wellbeing. And so what we were finding was people were sacrificing their own health and wellbeing to look after other people. And as we all know, you need to be in a good place yourself to look after other people. So we're like, okay, well then how do we address this? And then I pinched something from my wife's organisation, which is something I don't know where they got it from, but basically it was a bit of a philosophy that we've brought into our ethos, which is basically health, my mind's gone blank. Health, family, work. So basically they're the list of priorities that we want people to have within the organisation. So we want people to always prioritise their health and family before work. So, and people will never be judged for putting those things first. So that then created like a cool environment where people felt comfortable and safe to not be okay and to be vulnerable, and sort of brought the group closer together. It also brought another set of challenges in terms of people calling in sick more. And I was sort of like, when that first happened, I'm like, okay, what have we created here? People that are just calling in suddenly on the day, just not feeling like coming in and whatever else. But then what happened was the staff, through their own accord, like through no input from me or whatever else, created a WhatsApp group, a separate WhatsApp group for last minute sort of cancellations for other people to step in. So they were much more willing to step in for each other, which required a lot less coordination work on our behalf. And now we've got a very happy, supported group of people in the organisation. So
Incredible.
It's cool.
Fantastic. Anything to add to the false positivity narrative?
I think it's not a flick of switch approach. That's what I would say. Like, it's not like you can go as the owner tomorrow and say to your team, I think we're going to work agile now, because agile's a form of self-managing team, and let me know when you're done. It's definitely a whole of business approach, and as you say, it's always an ongoing adaptation. Like, you're continually working on it, and I think it's also how your practices work around that. So how your systems and processes, your delegations framework, your policies, how things get approved has to kind of shift as well, because they're all designed for another type of version of an org chart. So, and I think the other point is that goals are the glue that keep these things together. So purpose-driven, goal orientation. So it's about, if you think about it, that's where the energy goes, is to what do your team know with what the goals are for this month, but also what the planning horizon is for the next 90 days to next year, right? And depending on what lens you're in, the teams within these organisations might be how far a view that you're taking it, but really that design supports that goal orientation. So things around transparency become more important. Where are you up to with the goals? Where your roadblocks are? What resources do you need for your hubs to operate? You know, you've got to equip them with the resources they need to function.
Yeah.
So there's some other choices that have to be made. And as I said, compensation's the other big one that goes into when you're redesigning or co-designing for a better place to work. I still believe they're better places to work, though. Yeah.
Pros and cons. Everything.
We've all been in bad organisational structures.
But I think that's a good point, that it's not, even though organisations might be flat or flatter in a teal structure, there is still structure there.
Yes.
And
it's not chaos theory. Yes.
Yeah, and there does need to be, I call them guides rather than policies and procedures, because it's sort of there to give you a bit of a direction on what to do in a situation, but you still want people to use their creativity and minds to resolve a situation and come out better the other side, rather than just doing something because it says I have to do that.
That's what you have to do in that way.
Yeah, and that's been challenging as well, being an NDIS provider, because we get audited.
Yes, compliance.
Yeah, and we have to show sort of, okay, where's your manager at this level? It's like, well, we self-manage. So it's sort of like getting...
It's an education piece.
Yeah, it is
that
a
would
real
make
education.
their brains explode a bit.
Yeah.
It's definitely a ticker box.
Yeah, it's a bit of it. It's been an interesting experience, but don't be an NDIS provider.
I shouldn't laugh.
Neither should I, but I am.
But yeah, I think the awareness is building, which is really cool for these types of organisations. It's no longer just a wishy-washy out there thing that.
The biggest mob that's out there is HAIR, HAIR, the electric goods come out of China. That I think they're over 10,000 staff.
Yeah.
And they operate in a flat-based or self-managing, agile, whatever. There's a whole heap of names out there, different versions of it, but they're all self-managing team structures.
Check out Patagonia.
Yeah, Patagonia. He did some really cool things this week. If you haven't caught up with what he's, I won't steal his thunder, but check out what Patagonia did this week. It's pretty cool. So, Spotify is another one. They follow Holacracy, which is another form of self-managing. We're talking about teal tonight, but there's a few out there. But I think it's really what works for your context and what works for your team, but also going back to those intrinsic motivators, your why. Generally, the org like Burzog in the Netherlands is a really good one. It actually saves money because, and that was a motivation for that organisation I was working with. That they realised that they had so many parts and people. They had over 300 people just in their corporate overhead office.
It actually reduced people going into hospitals, so it was care in advance of people getting to that critical point by 30%.
Yeah, so
nationally, that's incredible.
And I think this way of working suits well for small to mediums or startups, because there's a real opportunity to set the tone from the beginning. Yeah,
that makes a big difference.
Yeah, rather than having, like I said, the brownfields of black, deep black, and trying to bring it back. You know, it's like the Titanic moving deck chairs around, trying to turn the boat. So, but I think the payoff for the employees is still the number one goal. Yeah,
absolutely. We've seen some interesting...
And the clients too. Yeah,
the
customer. Yeah,
incredible.
Yeah, and that's been one of the things that's been seen, has been a bit out there when I've been chatting to the staff, is basically if you focus on the quality of the program for everyone or the business for everyone involved in it, the bottom line sort of looks after itself. So if everything sort of comes back to sort of those things, then that's your biggest driving factor, rather than looking at and scanning what's in financial reports. Like it's more about what's in behind the figures that really counts. And that's doesn't sit well with a lot of people. But it's worked really well for us. Like through that whole period, we've managed to stay profitable and run a really quality program. So
yeah, it's fantastic. We've seen a lot of organisations that have responded really differently to this topic. So we've seen some in financial services who, got their team on board, said everyone can pick their salaries and their areas of responsibility and their own KPIs, and really getting that ownership in people's roles. And what they found is people initially set their salary really quite high, and then at the first sort of discussion point, not review, discussion about that, they actually adjusted their salaries down. And there have been other organisations that have tried this in the financial space and just couldn't make it work. Like talking about that, you know, that bureaucratic mindset has been there from day one. Some of these people, for 50 years, they've been in a system
and there's
like
nothing
that.
wrong. There's nothing necessarily wrong with bureaucratic. I don't want that message to go across. There's some pros to that model.
Don't make me quote Star Wars.
But I don't know whether the models are as adaptive as what we need for today's work, where work is at today. That's the key message. Yeah.
So that leads us to the final question, which is around, have you seen changes to organisational structures with our new hybrid ways of working? And Lloyd, how's that been for you? So we'll start with you, Nat, if that's okay.
With me. So I think that I like to see that we've had a reduction in bureaucratic theatre. So I think people, I think through the, I think it's really passé now to say the pandemic, people are a bit over it, but
totally.
Essentially, you know, what we've seen is that people are questioning their voices and choice. They're having different voice and they're having different choices. Yeah. And we saw the more human side or human centricity of work. You know, people saw us in our Ugg boots and our dogs in the background and all that sort of thing. So I think that, you know, org design supports or changes to org design support reduction in bureaucratic theatre. You know, like what is your purpose of your meetings? How many meetings are you having? How is decision making made? We want a more turbocharged decision making. So I still come back to, though, only really go down these sorts of paths if you believe in people and the mastery and the skills within those people to do the productive work and to get your business or your operation where you want it to go. It's not something to follow as a trend. That's probably what I'm saying.
Absolutely.
I think it's about whether it aligns to your ethos as a owner and your values proposition that you're putting out there. But I do think there are benefits to more collaborative. I'm definitely a big fan of that, collaborative working, inclusive collaboration when it comes to getting the most for your business. So, and you know, you can't go wrong if you have more skills and knowledge inside your business than what you actually need at any given point, because that's that adaptivity piece again. And, you know, sometimes, you know, when I say bureaucratic theatre, the classic job description. You know, you employ someone and they're employed in a particular role and they stay within the bounds of that PD and you reward them for that. And sometimes they could already have I would say not sometimes, they will have other sets of skills and knowledge that they've collected along the way, like in a portfolio of skills that are not required for that role or that PD, but are going there untapped. You know, so like when I went out and to do those workshops, we had a guy that was a Disney illustrator, that was a support worker that, I mean, he did phenomenal butcher's paper designs for the org chart, but he had all this graphic design and creative things that could be done with people with a disability that were living in the group homes that wasn't being tapped into. Yeah. Or people
that didn't even know about.
No, nobody knew that he was that, you know, and he was phenomenal. And then, you know, people that used to be an accountant, but were working as a support worker that had all these financial things that could be used to set up more productive and profitable homes. Like there's a whole heap of skills. So yes, I'm a big fan that the PDs and job descriptions we're more than that. Who we are is more than that. And how can you stretch into those other skills and capabilities?
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, it's been interesting with COVID, because I remember chatting to some friends of mine pre-COVID about how anyone that's not actually involved in the program, like day in, day out of the program, can work wherever they want, whenever they want. I don't care, like as long as the work gets done, and it always has. And they were sort of questioning me on that and saying, like, how can you sort of trust them to do that, or how do you know they're actually doing the work, and the sort of work speaks for itself. But what's been interesting through the whole COVID experience is people being forced to sort of allow people to work from home who weren't comfortable with people working from home, and sort of the extra things that have come from that. So I think by and large, COVID that's been one of the positive things to come out of it, is it's really created some new opportunities for people to earn that trust that otherwise they mightn't have had that opportunity to do. And I think trust is such an important thing with this whole setup and structure. So if you're someone that has trust issues with yourself and with other people, it's probably not the structure for you at all, because it won't work.
Go back to the mafia.
Yeah, pretty much.
Command and control.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, but yeah, I think there's definitely more of a movement towards the teal space.
Yes.
There's much more awareness, and I think that's really where things are starting to head. So while there are positives in terms of having a top-down approach, I think there's much more social awareness now amongst people, especially the younger generation who are on the internet and social media all the time. So I think if you really want to attract good people, then that needs to be something you need to change it up and start being about the people. And the more you support your people, the better the business does. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
Well, thank you, guys.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Are there any questions? There's a microphone, I believe, for people talking in the audience. Do we have that? Thank you, Kristen.
That was really good. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
I'm really interested about when you talked about leadership and, when people involved in different organisations. Do you think it's a bit of a failure of some leaders to actually know what their people do? You mentioned about the artists and people in that roles. And also with COVID, it really you could really see that some people didn't know how to be a leader because of what they were
Exposed.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Would you like me to start? Or
I'll just say something short. If you run a small business and you're not aware what other people are,
who your people
Sort
are.
of
who your people are and what they do, I think that
Yeah.
is a bit of a failure. It obviously gets harder as the organisation gets bigger, but you still should have the organisation set up so that, like, you basically want people with roles aligned with their interests and with their skills.
Yes. And
That
how they
creates
want to make a contribution.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's the best way to have an effective organisation, because if you're not doing something you enjoy, chances are you're not going to do as good a job at it as and if that something doesn't exist in your organisation, then open it up to that person to create it. Like, give them the opportunity. So like you were talking about with the graphic designer, like, show us something that could be done with this, like, give them the opportunity. So yeah, in a small actually in any organisation really, it is a bit of a failure. Yeah.
Yeah, it is a leadership failing, and I would agree with your comment around the pandemic, and that exposed a lot of 100%, right? It exposed, the people that straight away demanded that people come back, right? It exposed the people that weren't set up from a tech perspective. People didn't have the resources to do their role. If I had a client that everyone was plugging hard tops, right? And then it happened, and they had no infrastructure to
And
adapt.
the cost to the business.
Yeah, so I think
unexpectedly.
the exposure, leadership, I think there's a leadership capability thing in there, and a thing around, I'd say purpose, but like a thing around humility with that, and a trust, and to add to the trust, because trust is one thing, but psychological safety is the other when we talk about group dynamic. And so I think that, I think we saw some crap managers appear. I was promised I wouldn't swear tonight, but but I think we saw some real blatant failings, you know, and some of it was org design, but some of it was definitely people capabilities.
The spotlight went on them.
Yeah.
They were always there.
Yeah.
Have the spotlight on.
Yeah, and
Changed it.
I actually spoke at another event today, and it was called the 7 Dark Sides of Work. But
Fascinating.
but I think that there's an undercurrent there about, and I think sometimes when you move organisational design, that comes to the light. So like that organisation that I work with, there were some processes and practices that come to the light because the voices were being heard from what was happening out in the field, and some of that was manager related. So I think that, as an owner, you've got to be prepared to sit in the discomfort that some stuff about your business might come to the surface if you're changing the way that you operate.
Absolutely.
And I think just adding to that, in terms of the organisation design, I think it's really important that everyone within an organisation spends time on the front line so that they've got the finger on the pulse on what's actually happening. And that's something that's been a real challenge for me, given that I've had big periods of time where I haven't been able to work very much. It's actually getting in on the program to see actually what's happening rather than what's just been reporting back to me. But I think that's critical, and yeah, I think that's where you pick up all sorts of things as well, and you can really see the difference between organisations. And I think it also creates a bit of some people get a bit disenfranchised if they're being told what to do from people that have no idea actually what goes on down here and never ask and never,
Yeah.
Creates respect. If
Yeah.
you know, working alongside someone doing the same thing,
That's right, yeah.
not saying, well, you do that.
It's inequity.
Yeah.
With the whole COVID thing, you know, adversity, all of a sudden you discover new things,
Yes.
and it's going to help your roles
Yes.
to develop those businesses, and it helps us, some of us here are business advisors as well, it helps us to be able to talk to companies as well.
Yeah,
And
it-
explain that culture
Yes.
that they need to think about now.
Yes, but also setting themselves up for the future, right?
Yeah.
And because the world of work has shifted, right? And we all accept that now. And so I think it's about how you move forward and get that momentum. I still come back, it's the adaptivity piece, right? And that's that being able to plan and learn and move in an agile way. Because that's really all these self-managed and the versions of it, that's why they're set up that way, is that
Yep.
you want that responsiveness and you want that being able to make it a turbocharged decision making because there's less infrastructure. You want the inclusive collaboration. You want the change readiness piece. You want the psychological safety to be high. All those sorts of things have to be in play for your business to have that culture responsiveness to, because, you know, we buried our beloved Queen this week, and that will have a ripple effect for how business is conducted, no doubt, you know, as we transition to the King. So, like, there's even things going on a global level that will impact your business, and how is your business responding and planning for that, rather than being a sitting duck for it. And it is a design piece. It's a capability piece in there. As I said, more skills and knowledge than you actually need, but it's actually a design thing that needs to be talked about.
I heard a funny saying, and that was that managers and leaders that weren't that great, that were swimming naked in the water, when COVID happened, the tide went out, and they're all just going, eh.
Starkers.
I thought I liked that.
Yeah. Well, you know, we've got people job hopping at the moment.
Yes.
You know, for that exact reason. You know, that they're using their voice and making their choice. We've seen the rise of conscious consumerism. We've seen the rise of, I love this bit because I'm a bit of a rebel, but like conscious, you know, like employee activism, you know, where people are asking the workplaces, what are you doing about domestic and family violence? What's our position on that? What are you doing about the March for Injustice and Gender Equality? You know, what are you doing about being a speak-up culture here, not be a bystander for trauma that's going on or social injustices going on out there? Like, I think that's in there as well.
What's the latest trend that they're talking about? The people are not doing anything outside of their job description. Quiet quitting. Yeah, that's the new
Which
one.
I must say is like a bad buzz. Like, actually, I had a friend, went out to dinner with a friend the other night. She said, "Is that really bad? Because I do it all the time." But like, I think it's a label. Do you know what I mean? Like,
Sort of what you're talking about, though.
yeah.
But there's something to be aware of in terms of, like,
Yes.
okay, what's a way of countering that?
Yeah.
They just get to back out, I suppose. What do they get out of that?
Well,
They're
it's
not going to go home and go, oh, geez, I had a
Good day.
really
Yeah.
did something today.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a form of apathy, right? Like, it's a form of self-sabotage in some ways. And because that's like, I always think about it's like that people that only colour to the line, and you actually want people inside your businesses that are prepared to step above the line and don't play small. Yeah, but elevate and amplify. Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, like, because I think sometimes, that's why I think I said before, don't buy into the trend. Like, buy into what's more meaningful and purposeful for your business. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's got to be real.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were there any other questions?
You've done so well.
They
Thanks,
have done
Paulina.
very well. Sure, Wayne.
you talked about some of these trends, and when you talked about the teal evolution and things like that, some of the things you said, you could hark back to Covey's 7 Habits.
Yes.
You
God,
know,
yeah.
Semler,
I
what
love
he's done,
Covey.
and
Yeah.
all those sort
He's
of
a
people.
classic. Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
they have filtered in
Yeah.
to what that is
yeah.
doing now.
Yeah. And can I,
100%.
because I think I mentioned I learned participative design and open system theory, and it was an Australian guy that came up with that. His name was Fred Emery. I actually learned it off his wife, but he's dead now, God bless him. But this stuff's been around for a long time. It's not new.
Yep.
I think sometimes it can be packaged as new. Like it's like all good trends for those of us that were a bit older that, you know, the tiered skirt's on its way back in the fluoro socks. But but you know, all good things come back around. But I think there's still some essence that suits where we're at today. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'd just say that I don't think anything I've really done with the organisation is really that innovative. I just sort of, like I said, pick different things that I think might work and then run it by the team and see what sticks.
I think that's innovative.
Yeah. But if you're interested in this, I was going to mention a few people out there that sort of thought leaders that you could follow or be interested in that talk about. We talked about Frederick Rao, we talked about Herzog and the work of Jos de Blok over in the Netherlands. I don't know why it always comes. Yeah, Corporate Rebels, they're the ones I was going to mention. Yep. So there's a really cool group who also come out of the Netherlands, Jos and Pim, and they run the Corporate Rebels, and they have a plethora of stuff on their website. They set themselves a bucket list, and they went and interviewed, I think, 100 leaders, or that was their first level goal, around the world, around different ways or progressive ways of working. They were really giving an up you to the corporate world. They were both ex-corporates, and trying to figure out what some of this magic dust or what these elements are out there. So they're a cool organisation. Another guy that's really cool is a guy called Aaron Dingen. He runs a podcast and a book. I've brought it in today. It's called Brave New Work. And his stuff is sort of, you know, we talked about, is it the operating system or the people? Or so he does some cool stuff in when it comes to like the elements of your business and how that could be contributing to design failings or design faults within your work. So two really great. Do you have any others that you?
I basically just joined the mailing list of Corporate Rebels a couple of years ago, and so I just get some insights every now and then that I go scroll through. There was, back when I first launched, I was looking at different teal organisations within Australia. There were some groups being set up. I don't know if that's still the case now, but I'm kind of too busy to sort of follow that. I just sort of, I follow some people that I like on LinkedIn and that's basically where I get a lot of the new information.
People that you gravitate towards.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And people, not just like I mentioned at the beginning, it's not necessarily just in a business sense. It's people that you like and respect how they think and operate, and it can be from a variety of backgrounds and whatever else. So it doesn't need to be just in the business sense. It can be.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic.
And I think just give yourself permission to challenge the status quo. That's my final word.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, it makes it a lot more interesting.
We're born to be different.
Absolutely.
It's a Dr. Seuss quote. There's a Dr. Seuss quote for that. But yeah.
There's a Dr. Seuss quote.
We're born to stand out. Yeah.
Was there any other comments, questions?
Sorry.
No, feel free.
I want to put this bloke on the spot. His business that he runs down in.
He's one of the Robs, right?
One of the Robs.
Oh, Gateshead. My family, Housing Commission Gateshead.
He has implemented a public holiday policy, which is fairly unique, I think, in the region.
I'd
And I
love
think
to
it's
hear
really
about it.
leadership at its best. So I'm going to let him talk to you about it.
Yeah, great.
Yeah, so we've got a policy that we put in place about 5 months ago that will let people swap public holidays for something that's culturally significant to them.
Oh, I love that.
So
Yep.
we've got one of our team members that swapped out the Queen's birthday.
Yeah. I know, it wasn't that impressive yesterday.
For Diwali, because that's something that's culturally
I love
significant.
it. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Great.
And we've found that while the uptake on it hasn't been as large as we would have expected, for the people that it matters for, it really matters.
They lent in.
Yeah, that's
So
it.
Yeah.
being from an engineering business in Newcastle, which is typically seen as a pretty stuffy industry in, in a coal-centric town, to be able to do those little things to try and move us forward is really, really just great for us.
Have you found that people in the organisation have learned more from that cultural perspective as well? Like, has there been more exposing of things that are more meaningful to others?
There has been. When I come into the organisation, it was fairly backwards, to say the least. And there's been that cross-cultural learning has been fantastic.
What's
amazing.
Sorry, is it still an engineering organisation you're working for now, or who is it?
Yeah, it's still the same organisation I'm working for now.
Yeah.
You all know more about each other.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think breaking down some of those barriers from when I first started there, and it was quite siloed and
territorial.
very territorial. And these little things like people taking Diwali off, it sparks a conversation about what that is in the organisation. So it's not just significant for the person, it's significant for everybody in the organisation learning about those other things.
Yeah. I think what's
makes the world a better place.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a really good example of voice and choice.
Yeah.
And how that then connects to your value proposition when it comes to what you're offering the talent market or who's coming to work there. And, because I won't go, it's another topic for maybe next month, but like sometimes we can offer our EVP can be very generic and a one size fits all, like everyone.
Did you say EVP?
Oh, employee value proposition.
EVP.
Yeah, sorry, a bit HR talk there, but like it can be very generic, and I think what you've done is a point of difference or made it unique, and it's kind of cool that not everybody did take it up, right? Because it's about that choice factor, but there could be something else in your EVP that they're attracted to, that's more meaning for their own version of success. So I think that's good to encourage that voice and choice. Yeah, it's amazing. Good on you. Yeah.
Thanks, Rob, and thanks, Wayne, for helping
highlighting
us.
that.
Love it.
It had to be done.
Yeah, it did have to be done. I agree.
Yeah.
Can I just add something from the people perspective in terms of if you're looking at going to a teal organisation structure, the people that you bring into the organisation, it's critical that they're aligned with your values as much as possible. So I brought it up in one of the former presentations, but I'll just bring it up quickly now, is we've brought in something that the Sydney Swans used, like with Paul Roos, he's the former Sydney Swans coach. He had a no dickhead policy, which basically meant no matter how good a player they thought they were, they wouldn't be brought into the team if they were a dickhead. So we've got a similar philosophy with our with people that we bring in. So no matter what qualifications, certifications, how awesome they think they are or whatever else, if they're a dickhead, we won't bring them into the organisation, because a bad apple in a hierarchical organisation is you can kind of survive, but in a teal organisation, it's very difficult. Because like I mentioned before, so much of it's based on trust. So if people abuse that trust, then it makes things for a not nice experience. And I've been through that with one of the people that we brought on board, who came across as being very on board with things and then was stealing things in the background. So so I would be, like I said, people is paramount for it. And what you'll find is as well, if you have an existing organisation that is hierarchical, then people will tend to move away on their own accord generally if they're not really suited to it. Or because they're generally held to be more accountable by their colleagues, their team setup, rather than the person on top that was there before. Yeah, exactly. It's very much a shift. And so, but by and large, people don't really abuse the system because it's such a better system to work under.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah.
Are there any other thoughts, comments, questions? Yeah.
I guess I don't think there's an easy answer, and you've explained it very well, both Nat and both Lloyd through example. But the change, when you're asking people to change, there's just so many different emotions that are involved.
Oh, there's a period of loss.
And it's just supporting people through that change, I guess. And there's that trust and feeling a safe place and all of that stuff and common goal. I've worked in lots of different businesses where you've got people who they've bought into the purpose, they've bought into the goals, they love what they do, but organisationally wise, they push back with change, and it's just, I just don't know if there's a few words of wisdom to support that, because I find that difficult, because I often go to looking at what you do to support them as the business owner, what you do to support that. So what is the what's the processes I guess, and then I go to are they fit for the business? Is it that this change
potentially
doesn't suit them? That maybe I'm jumping too quickly to those two.
My first level question would be, how are they involved in the change? How are they involved in the change? What level of input, decision making, collaboration, or influence did they able to exert or feel comfortable to exert through that process? We're human beings, so sometimes change can trigger stuff that's not even to do with that workplace, right? It can do with lived experience from elsewhere, or so sometimes it's more complex than a simple. I agree, it's more complex than a simple answer. I think, change is hard for people, but it's actually a constant now, right? So. World of work is moving quick and fast, and technology is speeding it up and all those things. So, right, you actually need people who are change ready. So, and a willingness to change, or openness to change. So to, I don't like to go there because that's the dark side of HR. But sometimes it could be a realignment that needs to happen, or finding a workplace where change is not as prevalent for that person, and helping them navigate to get there.
And we're delving into the dark side of HR next month. I'm so excited.
It's hard, and it's, and trying to support that. And I love change. I mean, boredom is my enemy. So, but for people who that's really difficult,
they like the steady. They like the known.
Trying to find ways to support that, because they could still be a great asset. But they need to adapt.
Don't give up quick. That would be my advice.
They have to be willing to learn, for example, the technology side of things. We will take people who to work on the program who aren't very tech savvy, but they have to be willing to learn. If they just shut off to it, then that's not going to work out. So,
and to pick up on, I don't know your name, sorry, Wayne's point before, exposure, right? It's also the people's willingness to unlearn. So it's the willingness to give up as well. It's something that is an overlearnt skill if it's not serving the business well. Or overlearnt process or function. Look, when I did that participative design stuff, there were some angry people out there. But were they angry at the design process, or were they angry at the organisation? Because, and a bit of both, right? But there was definitely a sense of defensiveness and loss, and I would say trauma too. There was a lot of trauma inside that organisation. They'd been through some things historically, and that couldn't be underestimated. So go back to your organisation example. There's the engineering, a historical way of working is shifting that, right? So, or even a bias about what engineering firms are about, right? So, we've got to make friends with our unconscious biases at the same time, because we've all got them. I think that's the thing. It's okay for people to have their emotions. They're just emotions. And I say space and pace, but it's important that we give people the space and pace to explore that in a safe way. But before we do the eject button. And call my friend who's an employment lawyer. Before we do that, space and pace. There, so they're my things. Space and pace, voice and choice. And the more you can build that into your teams, man, the better. And I've led dysfunctional teams too, and I've had dysfunctional players. I've had a bullying complaint lodged against me. We've all got war wounds. It was unfounded, the bullying complaint, but I had to go through it, and I really had to check myself whether I had actually done that, And so, yeah, like I think that's where that self-awareness piece comes in too, and that who you are piece, not what you do, is super important. Which is the values piece that Lloyd was speaking about before. Yeah, did I answer that?
No, that was a good thing, because it was supporting that change, you know, and I find it often that there's this fear with change, and again that self-bias, because I'm not afraid of that doesn't mean other people aren't.
Yes.
And finding a way to support through that process.
Yes.
Because over the years, gosh, people surprise the hell out of themselves when they're challenged, and then it's like, oh, I can do that, you know. So it's supporting them to take that step and know that they're
My other key message is don't judge them from the operating system that they're currently in.
Yes.
It's a really good point. And can I play devil's advocate, because you know that's how I roll. But we've seen organisations that we've worked with, and it's been a pretty difficult thing to observe, where they're trying to make such a big cultural change in the organisation. They're trying to give people that space and pace, and they've actually hit the wall in the process of it. The business has actually gone under due to the way that they were trying to operate. And obviously there's so many reasons and so many things that went wrong in that scenario to make that business no longer profitable. But seeing that pain of an organisation trying so desperately to change and not being able to get there and still operate to make money to pay their people. Like it was a really, it was a horrible thing to witness.
Yeah, I might clarify that. When I say space, I mean culture, environment.
Yeah.
And when I say pace, you need to give the people an opportunity to reflect, because some people need that, just 100%. The way that they're designed, need that reflection period. Like a few of you today will go, oh great, I'll move forward with that, let's go tonight, you know, and then a few of you will like to ponder on it. And so I think the pace thing, because I'm still a big advocate when it comes to change, agility and organisational adaptivity, that we have turbocharged decision making.
Yes.
So I think that in that scenario you gave, it was more laborious decision making, not like over
more
thinking.
People not taking up, not being willing to make that change and go with it. It was more going from the brownfields to the green.
Oh, right. Yeah, one jump too far.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Too soon, too far.
Yeah.
For the industry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you kind of make some small changes first? Because that's what I was saying about actions being better than words.
Yeah.
So that like it's not all happening, doesn't all have to happen at the one time. Like you sort of make some small changes and then every now and then just point it out to the people, oh yeah, so suddenly you're doing this now. You didn't think you could do that. Like it doesn't have to be
blunt force.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's
yeah, absolutely.
The only thing I'd say, just watch out for what they call mixed mode. So mixed mode, there was another not-for-profit, they made, how Lloyd described his, the sort of the team model for their frontline workforce that was put in, but then everybody else in the corporate retained the bureaucratic structure and retained the job titles. And so then there was it caused which I call mixed mode, but there were two competing designs in the one place, which will cause rub at some point. Yeah, and so it is I think that was one of the teal things. It's a wholeness approach that you've got to take. Yeah.
I'd love to learn more about that. That's fascinating.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we are out of time, guys. So if there's no more comments or thoughts to share, I'd really like to thank Lloyd and Nat for coming along.
Yeah.
And Nat will be joining us next month to talk about the darker sides of working with humans and just, you know.
I like to think I'm the light, though.
Oh, you are the light. I'll be the dark. And Lloyd, I'm sure you'll be here to talk and add value as you always do. Thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Okay.